Alright, the first time you create a map, you're going to want to save it. So we'll go up to Save As so we can name it. The default location's My Documents in your unpublished folder. And then we'll name this one just Test Demo. Now, the normal practice is to place the map inside a folder with the same name. You're not going to want to add a folder in the Save window because you'll probably crash the editor. No idea why. So just open a new Windows window. Navigate to your unpublished folder in My Documents, My Games, RS2, and then under the Maps folder, add a new folder, name it Test Map in this case, which will pop up in the Save window there, and we can now save the map. We can also append to the beginning of the map the game type we're going to be using, in this case Territories, VNTE. Save. What is KillV? A new zombie mod for Rising Storm 2? No, it's the value that the editor uses to know when to kill a player if they've reached a certain altitude. So the default value is massive. You'll likely get an error telling you need to set it. -2000 usually works. This will kick in if a player somehow falls through the map or glitches through and needs to die. After that, we'll go ahead and save. A couple ways you can do that. Click Save. You'll see a checkbox with your map, hopefully nothing else. Or the easier way, just click Save Current Level. It'll save your map and nothing else. Save, save, save. You can't save enough. Save at the minimum every few minutes when you're creating things in the map, and certainly after a major change. The editor will crash. It will likely crash at the worst of times. So definitely save. Back up your files to an online or external hard drive as well to save yourself the headaches. One of the things you can adjust when you first open the editor are your snaps. I like to set all mine to the minimum values down there in the bottom right hand corner. Here we are in Unlit Mode, as you can see by the light blue cube selected in the 3D viewport. This is where you'll be doing most of your work in the editor. When you switch over to Lit Mode, sometimes things look a little cooler. This is not where you want to be moving things around, placing meshes, and copying things. You'll likely crash the editor, and when in Lit Mode, you'll typically get a much lower performance, even on a high-end rig, in the editor. When you first launch the editor, you're going to want to, and every time thereafter, load all your packages. This brings all the assets from the vanilla game into the editor in order to use them in your maps. If you don't load all the packages and you type in table, tree, something in the search box there in the content browser, you're only going to get a couple, if any. You actually have to click this several times until the fully load option, once you right click external folder there, is no longer able to be clicked. So 3, 4, 5 times, yet still you won't have all the assets in. It's just kind of something you have to deal with. Typically, if there's a specific asset you need, you're going to have to open the map that it contains that asset if it's not showing up. So here we've loaded everything we could so far. I've clicked on static meshes in the filters, and I typed in tree. I can switch between the thumbnail view and the list view. The list view is much less taxing on your system than the thumbnail view, less likely to crash the editor. So if I want to open a vanilla map, I've had one open recently, I can go to File, Recent. Otherwise, I will need to hit Open. It's going to default to wherever I'm currently saved in the map I'm working on. So to go to the vanilla maps, you'll need to go back out to your program files in whatever hard drive you've got Steam installed in, or the game. Once you get into Steam, Steam Apps would be the next folder you'll need. After that, Common. This might be very basic for some of you. Once you get into common apps, you'll go to Rising Storm 2, RO Game Brood PC, then Maps. This is all the vanilla maps here. So we'll crack open Jungle Camp. As you can see, there's several sub-levels. The main one we want is the Skirmish Mode VNSK. Click on that. Now, as you can see, it's still loading in different UPKs that it hadn't yet loaded. Once I've got that map opened up in the editor, I'll once again right-click on External, where it will again allow me to click Fully Load and quickly fully load. Okay, setting up the world info is very important for gameplay. It's where we tell the editor exactly how everything under the hood's going to work as far as the game types that we're going to have on the map, the number of tickets, the number of time, the cooldowns for artillery, recon, so forth, even the uniforms we're going to use, as well as the roles. So the first thing I usually do is just type my name in there because that's where the author's names go. But we can set the game type for Pi. Sometimes you'll have a map with several different game types, and the one you want to play in the editor, PIE, Pi, will set there. If you name the map like we did earlier, VNTE, the editor will automatically know it's a territories map, and you can leave that blank like I just did. The My Map info you'll need to set, even though there's only one option right now. This is where you're going to set pretty much everything about the map. Time, tickets, here we go with the artillery cooldowns for the north, the recon cooldown there. Looks like it's 300 seconds. All these values are in seconds, so 300 seconds would be 5 minutes. If we click on the north and the south, we can set up our reinforcement count for each team. We can set the spawn timer up for each team. They can be separate times for attacking and defending. Here we can set up our roles. Kind of nice thing in Rising Storm 2, the roles are automatically, unlimited riflemen are automatically default in every map. And then you can go in and set the specialty classes if you want 2 scouts, 4 machine gunners, however you want to do it. And then once you set the specialty roles, you can leave them 0 if maybe you don't want an RPG on a map without helicopters. Then you'll need to set your team leader. So we'll just go and pick Northern Commander is the role we'll need for that. It's the same for the South. It'd be the Southern Commander. So the roles can be set separately per team. Once you go down into the RO map info section, this is where we're picking uniforms, either NVA or VC, and then we have Marines and Army for the Southern Forces. Temperature of the map's default to 20. Maybe you want to kick that up if it's a steamy, hot day. The only thing I'm really aware of this affects in this game are the machine guns overheating, perhaps. I don't really know if it affects the flight model at all. Here we can also choose which team's defending if it's that type of map. One more important setting in world info, the environment color. Now this is by default, this is under the light mask setting, but by default it's black. And as you can see from the tooltip, this is kind of bathes the entire map in this color. It's very subtle, but it can make a big difference in the way things look. If you leave it black, it's not going to look real good, and you'll notice that if you build lighting the first time without setting it. Some people set it the same color as their dominant light. Some people use a completely different color. You'll have to play with the values. Flying around the map sometimes can be time-consuming if it's a larger map. I suggest using bookmarks. I usually place one at each objective. You hold down Control and hit a number. That way you want to jump back to that spot in the map, you just tap the number on the keyboard. Oftentimes you'll want to get things out of the way when you're flying around the viewport or even some of the overhead views there. Quickly tap T to hide the terrain and hit T again to reveal it. Same thing for all static meshes, can be hidden or revealed with the W key, which I'm doing here. I tap W, they all disappear. I tap W, they all come back. To hide decals, you can tap E and it will quickly hide all decals. To hide volumes, such as this one's an objective volume there or other spawn volumes, you can tap O. C to show collision. This map has no BSP, but that can be toggled with the Q key. As you can see, most of the collision here is pink, which means it is collide all, which means everything will collide with that specific collision. Now, this is all set through the models themselves. If I wanted to change the collision for a particular object, maybe I wanted people to be able to not trip on something on the ground, I'd click F4 once I select the mesh, type collision in the search box, and here I can change it to block weapons only, so someone would actually fall right through this trench if they walked on it. But as you can see, hopefully the color of the collision mesh around there has changed to a bluish purple rather than the pink, denoting that it's block weapons only. One of the first things you're going to want to do once you add terrain is lock the location. This will prevent you from accidentally moving the terrain, shifting it over to the side, and maybe even copying it by accident and having several terrains on top of each other. When you add the terrain, the default scale values will likely be not what you want. Here I've copied the vanilla map scale values, which is typically 64 X and Y and then 256 on the Z axis. You might need to adjust those for your particular situation, but these are good values to use, as the vanilla maps use these values. You can change the size of the terrain with the patches. So this will add or delete patches to the terrain rather than like scaling it up. That's not a good practice. So here, if I go into the overhead view, I can tap T to hide and show the terrain just like the 3D viewport. If I select the terrain and then click F4 for its values, I can find the number of patches I've got here. This is a medium-sized map. And I can also adjust the tessellation of the terrain, which is going to affect how the terrain scales at a distance, maybe making it a little less detailed at a distance and running a little bit smoother on different computers. If you're going to have trenches or any type of underground tunnels or anything like that on a map, you'll definitely want to check the Allow Rigid Body Underneath box in the terrain's properties. This will prevent players from flying up into the air if they die underground. Once you're ready to actually jump into the map and run around as a player, you can hit the button up there at the top of the window. Looks like maybe a sorry game board piece or something. This will launch you into Pi, or Play in Editor, which will allow you to do most of the stuff you can normally do if you were to actually play this in the game. Select your team, select your role. You'll be able to select different spawn locations if you have more than one. And it just allows you to jump in. I apologize, the video software I'm using to capture this did not really seem to sync real well with the Pi window here, so the gameplay's a bit choppy. But this will at least allow you to test things and jump into the map if you'd like. Often when you're running around in the map, a good shortcut to know when you want to get somewhere quicker is the set speed command. You can use your hit the console key, which is the tilde or the F3 key, and you can type in set speed with a float value. I usually use 2 or 3. And again, it didn't capture it real well in this video, but I'm able to run across the map at superhuman speed, which helps if I just want to test the flow of the spawns or see how objectives are captured, how quickly. If I want to change it back to the default value, I'd again type set speed and then change the value to 1. And then another thing you can test when you are in the editor somewhat, if you're the commander, you can run up to a enabled radio and you can hit control. The only downside is in the editor you can't actually use the radio, so I can't request artillery or recon or anything. To test that, you'd actually have to jump back into the game itself, and we'll show you in a minute how to do that. You can type suicide in the console if you want to kill yourself quickly, maybe to test spawn points as caps fall. This is often something you're going to want to test before the map hits the public. Because by then it's probably too late. Another way you can spawn into the map, right-click on the map and click play from here. Okay, another little secret tip, time-saving practice you can do. You can copy assets as they're placed in a map from one to another. So here I like this table and these plates set up. I'm going to right-click on it, go to Actor. That'll drop my overhead view right above it. I want to get this tree out of the way so I can copy that table. So I'm going to click the tree, right-click on the tree, go to Visibility, Hide Selected. So I haven't messed with the tree. It's still there. It's just out of my way. It's hidden. So I can do things in the top viewport here. I can hold down Control-Alt, drag it across, and select multiple things at once. Here I'm just picking up a couple other things. Maybe I don't want that stick on the ground. I can hit Control-Z to unselect it. Once I have everything selected I want, I can either hit Control-C for the copy shortcut or use the Edit menu like you normally would. Wheels are going to spin for a minute. The more stuff you copy, the longer that'll take. Now what you're going to want to do, just so you don't lose what you just copied, I just toss it into a notepad. So this is Control V into the notepad. This is what you'll get. So then I could go back to my custom map or whatever I'm working on. Certainly never save any of these vanilla packages. You do not want to save them. It will cause headaches, although I will show you in a minute how to fix it if you do. So once we get back to our map, maybe you've done something in the meantime, or your clipboard has been replaced by something else. So I'm just going to demonstrate here. I'm kind of putting something else in my clipboard to get rid of what I have, but it's not a big deal because I still have all this text saved in the other clipboard instance or the notepad. So I'm just going to select it all, copy it. I'm going to paste that text right into the map, and the editor is going to know what to do with it. So I just right-click, paste here. We'll paste it wherever you right-clicked, and there it is. There's the table. The blocking volume came with it, and everything else. So I need to kind of raise it up a little bit. I can do it with the arrow key and drag it. If I want finer movements, I'm going to click on one of these side views over to the right, and I can use my arrow keys up and down by tapping and get very small movements so I can get it exactly where I want without chasing the cursor around the screen. So that's been copied from a vanilla map, and I'll paste it into mine. And now I can just save it, and that will appear in my map. So rather than placing that down by hand, I saved a little time. Another way to save time, once you get a spawn set up, spawn point with your player starts. Here I've got a spawn camera attached to it, and then I've even got a spawn protection volume all plugged into the spawn volume. I can copy all of this, and as long as it's all connected already, which the spawn volume and the camera are assigned to that spawn, and the protection are all assigned to each other, I can then simply select them all. I can hold down Alt, or I can hit Control C, but I just drug out another one. Now this is another spawn volume. I'll need to hook it up in Kismet, but all the references have been maintained. So this blue box around it is the spawn protection for this spawn and this spawn only. The other one's been saved, it hasn't been affected, and the SDK kind of updated itself with the new values. So all of it's already connected, and I've saved a little bit of time there. If I want to move my spawn camera, I just select it in the 3D editor. I click the little eyeball above here, and that's going to allow me to move the editor to my perspective. So if I just fly around, I uncheck the eye. You definitely want to uncheck the eye. It'll move the camera to whatever you were looking at. So that'll be the view of this spawn when someone's changing spawn points while they're waiting for the spawn timer to come down in the game. And I can check to make sure all my references are still there. So my spawn camera is now called Spawn Camera 2. And this is Spawn Camera 2. So without me having to even make any assignments, the engine maintained the references when I copied it over. And then the previous spawn I copied is still all good to go and set up with its previous camera and spawn protection. Something to consider when you're setting up map boundaries or spawn protection volumes. I know the spawn protection works a little bit different in this game than it did before, but this still applies. You don't want to make the volumes, especially the out of bounds and the spawn protection, so short that someone could run through them. So if you'll recall, if you run out of bounds, you're going to die after so many seconds if you don't get back to the combat zone. If you make the volume too short and they run through it, they're technically outside the bounds of the map, but they're no longer going to be killed. Same thing with the spawn protection. In this game, it keeps you from using your weapon, so you're going to want to make sure it's big enough so they can't get maybe behind a spawn and suddenly they're able to use their weapon again. So let's say we accidentally change something in a vanilla package and save it. Here I'll modify this tree value. I'll go hit save. You can see it wants me to save a vanilla package, and I made the mistake of clicking yes. So it's now placed my own personal copy of that package in my unpublished folder. Now what's going to happen is when you cook your map, it will automatically cook everything in your unpublished folder under the packages, all the UPKs. So it's going to actually cook this package, place it into your published folder, which is going to then override anything in the vanilla game. So likely you'll try to join a server and you'll be kicked, or you'll start downloading things. So the best thing to do is just go in, find that vanilla package. You shouldn't have any in those folders. Delete them, relaunch. You should be fine. Once you are ready to actually play a map in the game, you need to obviously save the map, and then you need to cook it. So this fire button up here will cook it. It's usually the easiest way to go. I always click no on the packages because I don't want to accidentally save any vanilla package and cook it. That would be a headache you'll have to fix, and I'll show you here in a minute how to do that. So once you hit that fire button or whatever it is, you're going to cook the map. And the editor will automatically kick in with this extra window here. You will always get this failed to load texture random mirror disk. It was the same thing with Red Orchestra 2. Completely ignore it. It has no bearing on anything. If it's a smaller map like this one is, it's only going to take a few seconds. This map is now cooked. You'll need to manually close this that log window there. Now, as you can see, we've been working in the unpublished folder. So what cooking the map does is actually compresses it and moves it into a copy of it into the published folder, and it will maintain your file structure and folder names that you had in the unpublished folder. So as you can see, this is now published. It's going to be significantly smaller, and we can now play it in the game. When you're ready to play your map in the game, the Steam Workshop button is missing that we had in Red Orchestra 2, so you'll have to manually load the map. You can enter the console by hitting F3 or the tilde key, type the word open, space, and then the name of your map. The map will load in. You can then jump in and play. There are ways to add bots, although they aren't officially supported on Rising Storm 2, so maybe we'll cover that later if somebody needs that. But essentially, you're just going to jump into your map and run around, see how it looks like. It's always a good idea. I mean, you will almost certainly find things in-game that you didn't realize when you were playing in the editor. And typically, you're going to want to do this a few times just for bug hunting purposes and things like that. So you can then test your artillery and your radio command type stuff once you get in there. But that wraps up this quick tips, although it wasn't very quick. Some shortcuts, some time savers, some hard lessons learned over the years. So I figured I'd pass them on here. Feel free to join us in the Rising Storm 2 modding Discord. I've included the address here. I will put it in the description or on the forums for Rising Storm 2 itself. There are people that are very eager to help, and always good ideas floating around if anybody runs into a wall at some point, which is almost inevitable with the SDK. But good luck to you. I hope to see some new maps soon.